Welcome back, church. Today is going to be a continuation of the Armor of God. If you're new here, the purpose of this ministry is to reach out to veterans and first responders to help them to heal in the season that they are in. Some of them may have faced some traumas. Some of them may have experienced some physical, spiritual, or maybe even mental death, even if it was brothers in arms, brothers and sisters in Christ, even if it was enemy, or even if it was just innocent bystanders. God has something to say about it, and hopefully somehow, some way, I'll be able to convey that to you here today. Right? With that being said, forethought in the foreground is going to be message of the gospel, right? What is wrong with the world today? If you've reached back to the beginning of the series, we'll talk about 4 problems, according to Dr. Michael Heiser, the late and the great. Is if you would ask a first century Christian or a Second Temple Jew what is wrong with the world today, you would get 4 separate answers of why this place that we called Earth is a fractured environment due to sin. First and foremost, the fall of the adversary. Second, the fall of mankind. Third, a second incursion of angels that also fell from heaven with the beauty of women. And fourth, the depravity of the nations, the incident of the Tower of Babel, where we scattered into all the different languages and all the different nations, and we were rolled under powers and principalities. Right? If you know the message of the gospel is God's going to reconcile all that to himself, right? All his heavenly family, all his earthly family, right? The beginning of the end has been marked. The one who is promised in the first prophecy of the Bible, Genesis 3, enmity between Eve's seed and the serpent's seed. One would come to crush the serpent, right? We believe that he has come. He is the Mashiach, Yeshua HaMashiach Adonai, also known as Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Right? He was the one who was promised from the beginning. Several times over, since creation, there have been false prophets and false Christ who have come. All indicators from the gospel say he is the one. Right? That being said, he has done a raid on Calvary, which has prepared the way for the invasion of the kingdom, right? And he's disarmed those powers and those principalities and made a public spectacle of them. So no longer will you answer to those stars on the day that you were born in that constellation. You can now say that your sign is the cross. All right. Hopefully you've made it that far. If you haven't, maybe take a step back, check out some other things, and we'll get you caught up. Right? Hopefully, purposely, intentfully, my hope is that through this ministry we can build a kingdom. All right? We can build a community. We can build things for the Lord to where I can surround myself with this niche of individuals who may be in certain aspects. They may be in the prepper space. They may be in the tactical space. They may be in the first responder space. They may be in the medical space. It just depends. Depends. But in the end, you need people, right? And God's greatest command is to love him with all our heart, soul, and strength, and to love people as ourselves, each other, right? So hopefully I can love you and hopefully draw you near to me so I can surround you with our own communities and our own meekness, right? No saber rattling, but always at the ready. All right. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the guy running this ministry. Doesn't matter. My background is I've served in the militia currently as of now for about 15 years. Made it grass for brass. I do not have a military background. I did not serve in special forces or federal forces, rather. Unfortunately, I had an injury through high school that kept me out. But looking back, now that I see the Father's provision in it and the zeal that I had to do that, I had the desire to go in. Excuse me, he kept me out. All right, I now found a way to serve my local communities and do it better. All right, amongst the communities that I live in, I get to help my neighbor out. I don't get to waste my patriotism on regional interest for federal forces. I don't get to waste my patriotism on things that were sworn an oath to before men and before God to defend and protect. But I actually get to do those things here, and with a little bit more freedom. Right? Made myself grass to brass on that, helping out with disaster relief, anything from tornadoes to sandbagging to search and rescue, missing person, lost child searches, blood donations, food drives, you name it. We're here for the community. All right. Of course, the other side of the coin of that is training for tyranny, terrorism, all those things that we can't be bashful about. And it's looking more and more each and every day that it's going to be needed. Right. Apart from that, little experience in the ministry. I taught a boys' ministry. Second largest to the Boy Scouts, known as the Royal Rangers. I spent some time in that, about 3+ years, teaching the boys, young kids, anywhere from pre to kindergarten, and one patrol, first, second grade, fifth grade, and another patrol. And yes, awesome experience. Got them to teach them to be godly men, and got to move on from there. Unfortunately, as my beliefs grew, there came a point where the religious order that I was teaching that in decided that I follow the Bible a little too much, right? I have deep faith. I kind of had this notion that, I don't know, I'm just going to do what it says. So yeah, because of theological differences, I was discharged from that. And so now, this is what I look to do. I do so through an aspect of spiritual warfare. And my hope is that if you've been recruited into the kingdom, you've been told that you're in a fight and that you're in a war. My hope is to bring you to that understanding where you are in that war and help you to fight the good fight. But of course, take an inventory first. All right, today, the date of this video is currently 5 January of 24. What we're going to do is we're going to continue in the armor of God. All right, last time we talked about shouting to the feet, the boots of preparation of the gospel and peace, using weapons of spiritual warfare that tear down strongholds. All right, they're not weapons of war and carnal, but rather ones that hit deep. Right? Spirit recognizes spirit, deep calls to deep, and hopefully, with a limited amount of time that I get to spend with you, I can get you something to think about. Right? Hopefully, edify. My hope is that we can grow and learn together. You'll have somebody that you can relate to, somebody who can put their finger in your chest and say, "Hey, what have you done to consider this? What have you thought about this?" And hopefully show you what God has to say about it. Today we're going to cover the shield of faith. All right, the Ephesians 6:12, specifically here and now in 16 says, "Above all, take up the shield of faith, so that you may quench the fiery darts of the wicked one." All right. Hopefully, in the next few minutes, I'm going to try to unpack that for you, so that you can apply it in a practical way. All right. Above all, take the shield of faith. All right, so we've been talking about the armor of God. We've talked about what should be an everyday carry. Of course, you want to be wearing your armor at all times. You want to have that hedge of protection, that you want to be fenced in. No way for the adversary to reach you in any kind of way. All right. The reason why we unpack these things in detail is because of the things we discussed before, of what we're made up of, physically, spiritually, mentally. All right? Apart from the spirit, there's nothing that can affect you by the adversary. All right? So the spirit, this borrowed spirit that we're given with a silver tether, that cannot be affected by God. Everything else is subject to the war that we have here. All right? That means your heart, and that means your body. It's your soul, right? So, that being said, it's not as cut and dry when it comes to deliverance or to taking self-inventory and cleaning ourselves up and making ourselves fit for the kingdom. That means there's degrees, there's levels in which you can be impacted, right? There may be things that the adversary has legal grounds on you that you might not know about. All too often, we're taught that we're in this fight, but we don't know how to fight it. We don't know how vast the kingdom of darkness is and what the things are that can blindside us. And the more you dive into this space, the more you realize that we're just getting blindsided every day, right? The hope is we can help bring you to that understanding and help mitigate that so that you can start hitting back, all right? That being said, this one's going to be interesting, and hopefully it'll hit deep with you. So, above all, take up the shield of faith, right? Without the shield, we're kind of vulnerable, even though we have our armor on, right? The shield really helps. It can be overhead cover. It can be to the front. Either way, it can block, right? It quenches the fiery darts of the wicked one, right? Fiery darts. Fiery darts come in many forms. The most common way that the wicked one uses the fiery darts is through a high-speed avenue of involuntary thoughts, involuntary inceptions, and a leading into temptation. All right. So, simply put, he cannot curse that which is blessed. If you're blessed by Elohim, he has to try to lead you out of the hedge of protection into disobedience, so that God corrects you, right? Whatever that form of punishment may be. Right, so an example of this, you can reference back into the Old Testament. There was a time where King David had some success militarily. All right, you can find it in 2 Samuel. I believe you can also find it in 2 Chronicles. He starts to have some military success against the Philistine giants, right? I believe also the Ammonite king. He kills the final king and takes his crown, weighing a talent of gold, which is roughly about 75 pounds, right? That being said, because of David's military success against the flesh that was in line with the adversary, the serpent seed, it said that Satan stood up against him, right? What does that mean? What happens? It says that he caused David to census Israel, right? Now, there's something that's interesting that's in here. If you look at it in 2 Samuel, it says, basically, the Lord was kind of fed up with Israel again and is ready to correct them. When you look at the Chronicles, it says Satan stood up against David specifically to lead him into that temptation, right? Essentially, what ends up transponding, what ends up happening is he orders the commander to census. The response was, hey, whatever it is, may the Lord multiply it many times over, but why do you require this thing? All right. With a little bit of back and forth, of course, the word of the king stands. All right, but because Joab despised the order, he did as the king asked, but he did not number the Levites. All right. After that, the prophet comes to him and delivers the message, right? Stepping out of disobedience, because you weren't meant to census at that time under the law of Moshe. And he said, which would you rather? He offers up 3 different punishments. He's like, would you rather famine for 7 years? Would you rather defeat from your enemies for 3 months? Or would you rather have plague for 3 days? And so David, being a man after God's own heart, says, these people are just sheep. It's me. But please don't let me fall into the hands of men. All right. So he nixes the defeat for 3 months. All right. So what begins to happen next is the angel of the Lord, or the Lord himself, depending on how you interpret that, destroys Israel for 3 days, extends his sword, plague, killing the people, right? He finds a mount above where he is that is owned by a Jebusite, threshing the floor. All right, he's out there doing his business. Everybody else freaks out. He looks up and he's like, okay, no big deal. Goes back to his business. He finds it, offers him the property to build an altar and make sacrifice to atone. He offers him back counter offer. He's like, let me do it. I'll pay it. This is somebody who's a part of the mixed multitude. He's not an Israelite, but rather subjugated to him. And he said, nope, must cost me. All right. So that is how it came to be. Now, what can that mean for you? It may mean that when certain things happen, certain situations, that you have those involuntary thoughts, those involuntary inceptions, and you know that it's not you, so that should be a red flag and an indicator. So, certain situations and certain things, conversations, experiences may come to light when it comes to that. And you may respond automatically in a certain way, right? If you know that it's not you, then that's where you need to start taking inventory. Why is it when this thing happens, your mind goes here, right? Why do you think that way? Because you know that it's not you, right? That is an indication that there is a stronghold, that in some degree you've been affected by sin. Now, it may not be your own sin. It may be a generational sin. It may be sin from a relative or an ancestor that goes back because of what they did. It now infects you, right? So think about it, what it's about, what it could mean. Go back to it, pray over it, pray about it, ask for revelation, and ask that the Lord to loose it from you. What you gain here on earth, you gain in heaven. What you loose here on earth, you loose in heaven, right? So, fiery darts of the wicked one, involuntary thoughts of inceptions for certain situations. Take your inventory, pray over it, break the bonds, and release the curses. I hope this edifies you and lifts you up in some way. You guys be blessed. I'll catch you on the next one. Out.